Hello, hello, YouTube world. It's a pleasure to see you folks. My name is Dustin Cormier, and this is another episode of How to Rock Astrology. Today, I'm very happy to be further expanding my net of my associations. Most people know me as a Tropical Vedic astrologer, but I've always been into the work of Jeffrey Wolf Green and evolutionary astrology. Today, I'm very happy to have another evolutionary astrologer coming on to discuss Jeffrey Wolf Green's evolutionary astrology with us. My friend Jo-Anne is a fellow Torontonian like me, and we've met, we've hung out, and we decided that we would do a video like this. Now, Jo-Anne has recently graduated from Solwise School of Evolutionary Astrology through instructors like Laura Nalbandian, Rose Marcus, and Patricia Walsh. And I'm very excited to see what you have planned for us today, Jo-Anne. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much, Dustin. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I've really wanted to do this for a while now. I feel very honored to do this show with you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's truly wonderful to have you here as well. Now, Jo-Anne has a whole presentation prepared for us. You've taken some meticulous time to make some slides for us, and I'm very excited to see what you've got to show us today. We decided that we'd do a little shout out here next weekend with everybody watching here. By the time I put this out, it'll be the coming weekend, October 6th, 7th, and 8th. The JWG Association of Evolutionary Astrology is having a sort of a retreat. So this is a school that is active, and there are people learning about Jeffrey Wolf Green. So get on out there and check it out if you've been wanting to be a part of this particular school of astrology. So evolutionary astrology, a la Jeffrey Wolf Green, we know that there are different people who convey evolutionary astrology in different ways. Jeffrey Wolf Green's school of EA is very particular. So I'm happy that you're here with me, Jo-Anne. Jo-Anne is going to show us a general overview of the intentions of Jeffrey Wolf Green's evolutionary astrology, what it is, what it's about, and some guts of how it works, what it means to the soul. So take it away, Jo-Anne. I'd love to see what you have prepared for us.
Okay, thank you again, Dustin. So I guess we should share screen here so that I
Sure.
can put my slides up. Just
Perfect.
find where they are here. Okay. Okay. Are you okay to see all that?
Yep, I can see
Yeah.
your screen. So what is astrology? It's looking pretty clean to me, Jo-Anne.
Okay. Perfect. So, yeah, what is astrology? Well, it's a language system of symbols used in studying the celestial bodies and spheres that influence all forms of existence. So it's not just for, people doing charts on people or, um, if you've got contracts to sign. I mean, it's very vast and broad, and it's I think it dates back to uh, probably about 5,000 years ago, or I think around third or second millennium, when it started becoming more academic in society or civilization. And the Mesopotamians, they were probably the first to come out with it. And there were also different house systems that began to evolve back in that time. And I think the Egyptians might have even been using it earlier than uh, 5,000 years ago. So it's also possibly used back in, I think probably 20,000 years ago. So I'm looking at this next slide here. We're looking at the Lascaux caves where ancient civilizations and cultures, they were looking up to the sky, and studying the stars. And they were using the stars and the moon and the sun and all for harvesting, well, planting seeds and harvesting
Mm,
their crops. And they were,
hmm.
yeah, like they were using astrology way back then to help guide them. And so, yeah, if you were to visit this site here at the bottom, you would see this beautiful layout. It's a videotape online. You'd see this beautiful layout of these caves. And if you look at the bull, there's been a lot of research and discussions on the dots, what the dots represent around the bull's eye. And they apparently are said to resemble the Pleiades star
Right.
system or cluster in the sky,
Cool.
which is the constellation, I think it's Taurus. Although I'm not sure about the precession,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
I think we're maybe around 7 degrees or something like that off. But still back then, 20,000, 15, 20,000 years ago, the star systems. So this is evidence of showing that um, these ancient civilizations were looking up into the sky for guidance and
Mm,
using astrology as springtime. Taurus is Aries marks the spring equinox, but Taurus is very much a springtime um, archetype.
right.
And
Persephone.
yeah, Persephone and Hades and the story there about springtime and renewal
Mm,
and fertility and also, it's interesting because back then, it shows evidence that people were looking up to the stars and the sky, also again for guidance. But there's always this thing about rising. So within every living creature on the planet is always rising to something better, seeking a higher self of some kind and trying to evolve oneself. So there's that rising of looking up into the sky,
mm,
which is quite significant and evident here, what these past cultures were doing. And yeah, so also with the moon and using the moon cycles monthly, we've got like 8 different phases of the moon. And it happens once a month. And we were using the moon cycles, like I said, as planting seeds and harvesting our crops and
mm.
when to hunt, during the full moon when there's the most light given on a full moon that even animals are
Yeah, I was gonna
out.
say that animals, when the full moon happens, the animals all interact differently than when it's a new moon.
Yeah, it's like it does something to the psyche. Everything becomes alive. And somebody just mentioned to me the other day that hospitals tend to increase staff during full moons
Right.
because you just don't know. There's more opportunity or tendencies for accidents and mishaps and those sorts of things to happen during those full moon cycles. There's also moon is representing the emotional body, the tides, pulling the water. We're about 60% water. So it does actually have an impact on us. So, people who don't get astrology or they don't believe in it, you really need to take a second look at it before you come to a firm assumption of what it is. Like give yourself a chance and um, give yourself the choice, is what I'm trying
Mm,
to say.
mm,
Make yourself, give yourself a better choice whether you want to consider it or not. But that comes from research. You can't just, always be listening to what other people say. And evolutionary astrology also has that, um, promotes that to go do your own research and
mm, mm,
um, just go on your own self-discovery and find out the information for yourself rather than listening to, what people say in the news and find out yourself, do your own
mm,
thinking. And that's part of an individuation element within yourself. And that's key is we're always trying to individuate and become more of what we are.
Mm.
So yeah, moving on to the next slide.
I guess I'd say Jeffrey Wolf Green to me, he's always struck me as somebody who cultivates, he reminds me of me in the sense that he has cultivated, he's got his finger in many pies in terms of traditions of astrology that I think that he looked to. And I think that it reflects that individuation. His astrology is a constellation of what it seems to me to be different traditions. And he kind of has, I don't know if I would say created his own, but somewhere along those lines, he's amalgamated these traditions into something that stands out in the astrological fields, I think.
Yeah, this is a very unique paradigm that he's created. And it's not, I think that he worked with others, of
Hmm.
course, and he did research, but it's still very, very unique and it's um, very simple,
Mm.
yet it's very deep and rich, and
Mm.
especially in the archetypes. Um, but he created this paradigm, and it was transmuted to him in a dream
Right.
from from Swami Sri Yukteswar, um, the whole paradigm, and in Sanskrit. So he was gifted with this ability to understand Sanskrit and write the book, well, create the paradigm and write the book. Yeah, like, and it's unique. I've heard my teachers say there's nothing like it. There's
Mm.
all kinds of other different uh, types of astrology out there. Like you've got traditional astrology, you've got Vedic astrology, which
Hmm.
is what you practice.
Hmm.
There's others like medical. There's all
Hellenistic.
kinds. Hellenistic, whole sign astrology,
Mm-hmm.
those kinds. But this one sort of cuts through everything.
Hmm.
I'm not discrediting the other ones. I think they're wonderful. You can add those on,
Right.
which is great.
I
And
agree.
yeah,
I feel
I
like it
do
goes
that.
to a depth that I just haven't seen in any other tradition, not even in the Vedic. The Vedic
Yeah,
high fives Jeffrey Wolf Green a lot because I think he has his roots in such a Vedic consciousness. The fact that a lot of his paradigm he dreamed it was transmitted to him by Sri Yukteswar. Sri Yukteswar was a Vedic Jyotishi. So I'm not surprised that there's a lot of times where the Vedic people high five with Jeffrey Wolf Green, especially when it comes to the South Node and North Node, Pluto and its integration point, and the integration points of their lords,
right.
their
Yes.
dispositors.
Yeah, and the dispositors, you have
Mm-hmm.
to look at those as well, and the
Mm-hmm.
house systems, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's just such a wonderful paradigm, wonderful tool that can be added on and used. And what it does is it gives you the soul story,
Mm-hmm.
the basic story, and then you can start developing it. Whether you're developing it, well, you're going to use the archetypes to develop it, but which is very unique to any different chart. It's like spiritual DNA. That's what this
Mm-hmm.
stuff is. That's what astrology is to me. Overall, it's spiritual DNA. And, depending on how adept you are at it, you can really, really pinpoint the essence of a soul.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah,
Beautiful.
it's really brilliant work. And yeah, I've heard there's just nothing like that. It just narrows things down, and then you can add on other stuff as well to, enhance your readings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what is evolutionary astrology? So yeah, at one point or at some point in life, people often ask themselves these questions like, what am I doing here? What's my purpose? who am I, which is this guy down here with the
Mhm.
question mark on his
Mhm.
face.
Yeah.
And lessons, what lessons? Like, was I'm supposed to be learning lessons? And what's the meaning of life? And some people think that, maybe the meaning of life is to live life to the fullest. But I agree. You want to basically go into what your desires are. And um, yeah, so going into this a little bit deeper,
Hmm.
um, we're looking at a specific paradigm, which I was just mentioning, that's based on natural law and natural science, which helps the soul to evolve and grow by identifying the soul's past karmic conditioning and answering such questions as these on the screen. So the more that you go into the archetypes, like the archetypal knowledge, which, for example, Carl Jung, he used astrology in a lot of it, probably almost all of his research, and he just took away the symbols. He helped also create the archetypes that we use, or at least evolutionary astrology uses,
Mm.
and they're very, very deep and based on human psyche, psychology, but not just human. I mean, you can apply it to mundane astrology, what's going on in the world. You can apply it to anything,
Mm.
these archetypes. But basically, we look at three elements in evolutionary astrology. So we've got, it's called the Trinity of Being. So you
Mm.
have the moon,
I'd just
which
like to
represents,
ask you, Jo-Anne,
yeah,
sorry, just
sure.
to
No, that's okay. Interrupt when,
thank you,
yeah,
thank
when you
you. Just
feel.
to reiterate, would you say that Jeffrey Wolf Green got a lot of the guts of and the roots of his understanding of the archetypes from Carl, like when it comes to the signs, Taurus, Aries, when it comes to the planets themselves, does he get a lot of it from Carl Jung? Is that like the literature he would have read to, I mean, obviously it's intuitive because the archetypes are within us all. Um,
Yeah.
but in EA, is that like the bedrock of literature that you would get an understanding of the archetypes through? Is Carl Jung?
Um, yeah, I think that a lot of it is probably coming from Carl Jung's research,
Hmm.
but also nature, natural
Hmm.
laws,
Hmm.
how nature works. There's somebody else too that I think that we've been referred to a lot as students is what's his name? How could I forget his name?
Am I
I have
like,
his book here. Hang on a second.
yep, yep.
It's yeah, Redier.
Verdane Rudyard. Yeah, yeah.
Dane
I thought
Redier.
so. Yeah.
Um, and this is the lunation cycle, so it's all the phases of the moon. And he's
Cool.
he's brilliant too. So I don't know where he got his research from, but
Hmm.
he's extremely significant. Like he's an icon in the astrology world
Totally.
for his knowledge and research. So there's some that came from that. Um, I really don't know
Cool. No, that's
if I could
perfect.
ask him, but
Mhm.
yeah, I think that it's a combination of sources and also other astrologers. I believe um, Jeffrey was probably, uh, hanging out with
In
and
cahoots with.
exchanging information with other astrologers of that time and putting information together. So I think it's a combination of sources coming out with his book and the whole paradigm
Yeah.
that
Thank you,
he's
Jo-Anne.
created.
I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah, yeah. That's the best I can answer that question.
That's
And it's
definitely
a
fair for
excellent
sure.
question. Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah. Um, okay, so yeah, just going back to the Trinity of Beings. So we have the moon, which is the fourth house Cancer water sign. It's our emotional body and our egoic image. It's where we feel safe, secure, and uh, where we find our inner security within our emotional body, because we evolve through the emotional body. And then the there's a trine that goes to the eighth house, which is Pluto, Scorpio, and that represents soul, which is the metamorphosis of the soul, the transmutation of the soul through death and rebirth, and also the element of desire. And then the next trine goes, or the last trine goes to the 12th house, um, which is Pisces, and that's Neptune also, the planet Neptune. And it's basically about finishing up and having a relationship, going back to source, the divine. So when you're born, also, Cancer is the mother archetype,
Mm,
birth.
mm,
Even though we got birth with Aries too, like some
mm,
there's overlapping, but each element has a slightly different flavor to being, with birth. Birth, Aries coming out of Pisces, on that line, the ascendant
mhm,
is like a bang. I'm just out here, and it's impulse, initiating, beginning. Whereas birth coming from the Cancer archetype is basically the childhood nature, the inner child, the inner the lunar inner child. I think
Lovely.
that's how we look at it. And it's the emotional body when the early childhood. And so, yeah, looking at the ego is formed, and then you go to the eighth house and you've got soul, and then you've got Neptune, which is Piscean, and that source. Neptune, Pisces, 12th house is our ultimate destination, right? So we've got um, yeah, so we've got like the birth, we've got the life of the soul, and then we've got the return to source. And with
Mm,
Pluto, we use the Scorpio archetype because not just because of metamorphosis and the soul always changing in a state of transformation, but Scorpio is also about attraction resistance, and it's very intense. It's
mm,
very magnetic and drawing you in, hypnotizing you, enticing you to your deepest desires. It's like that, come with me and I will take you on your deepest emotional
mm,
journey to discover yourself and your deepest desires. And these desires can take you on a progressive or a cataclysmic experience. So progressive is an easy path where you just roll with the waves, right?
right.
But when you get into the cataclysmic stuff, you're getting into some serious tidal waves that are overwhelming, and you just, it creates chaos
Right.
within you, and it compels you because Pluto's unconscious, and even Scorpio's unconscious. It's very deep within you, and so it forces you to face, to confront what your limitations are when it comes to
Mm,
Scorpio, because Scorpio's about your limits.
right.
How far can you go, right? It's that M that just goes to the highest points, where it tries to touch spirit, and then it plunges all down past the depths of death.
Mm,
And there's no end to it, right? Like you could fall forever and ever until one day you just say, you know what, I'm done here. I've had
yeah.
enough.
Yeah, no kidding.
I need
Sounds
to
like a
go to the
Pluto
light.
transit.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, so that's the soul. These are the
Mm,
experiences that the soul, the emotional impact that it creates. And so there's these tendencies, also because it's unconscious, these tendencies to repeat the past patterns that you've been how you've been behaving with people or things or whatnot. You just keep repeating the same stuff over and over again. They become karmic patterns,
mm,
and they're imprinted deeply into the soul. And the reason for that is because part of repeating these patterns in the karmic conditioning is because your inner security is found in the past, and Pluto's all about the unconscious security patterns that are found within you. And so, yeah, they can be re-imprinted into your present life, even though you think, oh, I've grown up and I'm moving on with my life and I'm doing stuff. You could still be repeating these same patterns, processes with people or things unconsciously. And when that happens, they get re-imprinted. So it gets even
Mm,
deeper in.
deeper.
It
Yeah.
penetrates even more, and it gets harder to release them,
Mm.
right? So yeah,
Like
like
I almost
there's
read into it like the Vedic people often make a correlation of Brahma, which is creative, which is the cardinal signs, and that's like the past. And then there's Vishnu, which is the present, which is the fixed signs,
yeah,
which is like a consolidation of all the influences of the past. And then there's the mutable signs, which is Shiva, which is like what is the intended integration that's trying that these fixed karmas are moving towards, because we all have these. It's almost like we kind of need those fixed karmas in order to move forward, in order to have stability, in order to have structure. But nothing is solid in the world of in our world of evolution. Nothing can stay the same. But that's the painful crux of Pluto, is that one part of us wants to stay the same, and in order to get around uh, to move towards evolution. But when we get to evolution, that means we have to change at some level and transmute what has been the same. I guess I just
exactly.
wanted to make that correlation to the cardinal fixed and mutable.
Yeah, that's really fascinating because especially with the mutable trying to penetrate and change the soul's path.
Mm,
So it's very, very similar um, process going on here. Like I can see the overlapping happening,
mm,
which
mm-hmm.
is which is really, really interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of similarity, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. There
Um,
always is between cultures for sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, okay, so let's go on. Let's chat a little bit about the desire. So desire is simply the core of the hero's journey, and the hero is the soul. And it's about the soul's heart. So we go from free will plus natural law, which equals cause and effect, which equals karma. So I'm just going to skip ahead on a slide here and put
Mm-hmm.
up this from karma to dharma. So most of the karma that we're repeating, as I mentioned earlier, is just repeating past patterns. So just the way you think. Some people think that karma is ultimately this good and bad thing, like with evil and good and but in fact, that's not the case at all. Some of it is like maybe around 10%, the good deeds and the bad deeds that come back to you, depending on how bad they are and serious they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, the karma that we're repeating is just our own um, patterns, our inner patterns repeating again and again until the light bulb turns on and we say, oh, I get it. I see what's happening here. And then like everything clicks up and there's this connection of energy that gets hooked up. And it's like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm never doing that again. Or
Mm-hmm.
I can see a pattern in the most common that I can identify with is this pattern in relationships. I keep going out with this person who seems more and more like this father figure that I keep finding myself attracted to. And when you find that in yourself, you're realizing, oh, I must have some issues with my animus, or for a woman
Mm-hmm.
dating a man or a man dating a woman with the anima, I
Mm-hmm.
must have something deep inside my consciousness that's going on that I haven't been aware of. And as soon as something happens, and the light bulb clicks on, you realize this is the same as last time and the time before. That's an opportunity for you, that's where it's come into awareness. That's an opportunity for you to do something about it. Basically, dive deep into yourself and discover why, answering the question why. And that's all what evolutionary astrology does, is it answers this question, why, within myself or yourself. So
Beautiful.
yeah, so, karma is not a bad thing. Like sometimes there's good karma repeating as well in good deeds, that you're just a good person. That's
Mm.
part of your karmic um, complexes as well. So yeah, it's just it needs to be looked at in a different light for
Amazing.
what it really is. Yeah,
In the philosophy of yoga, we say that even karma can be sattvic, which is like light bearing, which is like good, or what most people would consider good, but it is still karma. And it's amazing to hear, again, it's a cultural sort of inference here that even though sattvic karma is still karma, a lot of the times when we tap into the libidinal unconscious and the anima and the animus and what's inside of us, we've just kind of got to let whatever is inside of us sort of happen. And the more we tune into our heart and the unconscious, the more what is meant to come through us is going to come through us, regardless of the mind's idea of right and wrong. I think
totally.
astrology is one of the great ways of tuning into that. And I think evolutionary astrology seems to have that tone to it.
Yeah. I read somewhere just recently that the yogi or the monk or the person who meditates and um, throws their entire life that they could live into spirituality, and all they want to do is meditate and be a monk. Um, I don't know. My thoughts are on that right now. I'm meditating on that
Hmm.
assumption, because the element of desire in the soul to me is extremely deep. So even if you deny it in this life, it's still going to come after you in the next life. It's part of the emotional body.
Hmm.
Um, it's part of the Capricorn Cancer axis, where you've got the goat with the fishtail is Capricorn, going back into the past, because it also represents the past as part of the
Hmm.
archetype,
Hmm.
one element to the archetype of many. And the fish or the tail at the end is water element of Cancer, and you can try to run away from your emotions, but they're always going to follow you, right?
Right. Right.
And a lot of our emotions are pegged in desire. What do you want? What's your deepest? It's very Mars as well. Mars is also about um, experiencing one's desires. And but yeah, like I really I really question that. My thoughts are on it right now about, if you even wanted to just um, give up your life for just spirituality.
Hmm.
Well, you might be able to achieve that in this life, but your soul is going to want to get what soul wants. Eventually,
Hmm.
it goes the way it wants to go. And, you
Hmm.
have this identity here, your personality as, you, Dustin, are myself, Jo-Anne. But our souls have different identities, right? And
Hmm.
they're much deeper, and they're here, they're living through the experience of our present identities to get what they
Hmm.
want. But if it doesn't
Hmm.
get everything, it's going to come back, and it's going to want to fulfill that desire.
So yeah, it's whack-a-mole. The mole goes in and then it pops out somewhere else. That's why I often try to make a distinction between ascetic, which is like someone who's pure, who lives on the top of the mountain, who lets go of all their desires, versus the hedonistic kind of consciousness. Because I
Yeah.
find most sages, like the Buddha, he hung out with the ascetic people and dried himself out, and then he hung out with the drunkards and the hedonists, and then
Oh,
he
that's
found that
right.
center, right? And you could be a spiritual person on either path or a non-evolved person on either path. That's
Yeah.
often how I think about it.
Yeah, that's interesting because the hedonistic qualities or type of life is Taurus. Taurus
Mm-hmm.
is very much into the senses and pleasures, which is the polar point of Scorpio soul.
Right.
So yeah, it's about, um, experiencing the pleasures of life and thus the desires, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Integrating
interesting.
them.
Integrating, yeah, whether you're going to live them in this life or some other life. Um, but yes, I agree with you that even if you are um, hedonistic, you can still be a spiritualist,
Right.
seeking higher evolving. Yeah, oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. Good. I'm with you on that,
I'm
Jo-Anne.
glad you brought that up. That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Psychedelic.
Yeah, well, um, yeah, okay, so then let's just move on here. Yeah, so I've got the slide up from karma to dharma. So the idea is you cannot leave this plane until you've resolved your karma. And that's what keeps pulling us back onto this earth plane. Um, so you may do some unpleasant things, like cleaning. That's that chop wood, carry water
Mm,
philosophy that you have to do your time, make up whatever happened in the past because the laws of karma are not they're the laws of the universe.
mm,
It's not it's like if you egg somebody's house, chances are that's going to come back to you. Everything's a reflection and it's just yourself. I always tell myself when I'm having a bad day or some bad experience, it's just myself coming back to me. That's all. So
mm,
it's not as intense feeling or
mm, mm.
feeling like a victim. That's that stuff. Yeah.
That's a great word. Victimization is something I often talk about.
Yeah, victimization. A lot of us do feel like victims of God or spirit. you know um but there's a duty to try to clean, and that's the Piscean Virgo archetype, or the
Mm,
access where um Pisces could be playing out the victim, and then there's Virgo that's trying to purify oneself.
mm,
And you can get caught up in the lesser evolved archetype, pieces of the archetype, elements of the archetype,
mm,
such as victimization, and then the higher is the Virgo purification, but sometimes or perfection, but sometimes that's you can't
mm,
take that literally either, because that can
mm.
make you go crazy,
It's the
right?
martyr complex, like the high horse, like I have to purify myself because being a victim makes you feel like I have to get myself super
Better or
better or as if you weren't perfect already.
yeah. Yeah, trying to perfect oneself. But what that Virgo perfection is about is, the maiden for Virgo, which is Demeter,
Mm,
uh, the goddess Demeter. She's got the chaff and the wheat, or separating the chaff from the wheat in her hand, which is also representative of Gaia, which is Mother Earth, right? Um, it's got a bit of a mothering factor to it, a nurturing factor to it, but it's also Virgo is about separating the muck, the stuff that's no longer needed. It's
mm,
Virgo is an elimination
right.
archetype.
Mm,
It's what goes on in your digestive system,
nice.
and to excrete
Yeah.
the stuff that's toxic, and then the stuff that's the waste that's being excreted is Scorpio. So
Mm,
Scorpio is also an elimination archetype. So yeah, like it's about trying to get rid of the stuff that's no longer needed and only keeping the essential qualities and elements that the soul needs to continue the journey. And Virgo's like that. It just wants to, it's very efficient. It just wants to keep what's essential,
Mm,
what's necessary
mm,
and needed, and doesn't need all the other stuff. And if you do hang on to this stuff, and Scorpio is, you got the claws tendency to hang on to things and never let go.
mm,
Um, if you hang on to stuff, you become septic, you die. And that's the Scorpio archetype, the metamorphic processes that are all taking place. So yeah, there's this need to try to do one's dharma, and we're all doing it whether we're aware of it or not. We're doing the things that we don't like, but we do them because we need to do them. Um, and yeah, it's just this process that's always ongoing. And I think it's also in Buddhist philosophy about, I think there's like the four truths
mm,
of about life and its suffering, and we keep incarnating, reincarnation belief, um, living again and again, going through these life cycles until we reach the state of nirvana where we no longer, like the actual reincarnation cycle gets broken. We don't
mm,
have to come back. There is an end to all of it, but it's a long time.
No kidding.
I think they calculated it, if my memory is correct, in evolutionary astrology class I did. This is the Jeff Wolf Green astrologers, Evolutionary Astrologers Association of Evolutionary Astrologers, where Kristen Fontana, she discussed how many lives would it take for a human soul to live, to reach that state where, or pretty close to it. And it was something like, she said 250 lives, which is interesting because
Hmm.
Pluto goes through all the signs
In 250
248
years.
years.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting correlation going on there, that it's like a full Pluto cycle. Now, mind you, we wouldn't do it all in 248 years.
Right.
I
Right.
doubt very much,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the karmic conditions have to be just right for you to incarnate again, to continue the path. But that's the thing about evolutionary astrology too, with the soul, is it's about picking up where you left off from
Right.
and continuing your evolutionary journey. It's like you're the driver of your ship, and nobody's going to do your karma for you. You're at the wheel, and you have to be the one that is going to drive that ship in the direction that you need to go towards, whether you like it or not. You have to do it. And when you don't like it, that's dharma stuff
Mm,
happening.
mm,
But you've got to drive that ship. God is not going to put you into a great place for it.
mm.
The soul has to earn it. The soul
Totally.
has to do the work.
Right.
And that's the transformation and transmutation process going on for the soul to know oneself. Even if you were placed in the best possible conditions, say said, forget this, just put me at the end of the whole thing, put me in the state of nirvana, you still would not have evolved enough to understand what that state of nirvana is. You have to go through, every step of the way.
Totally.
You got to,
It's not being in nirvana right now that makes nirvana what it is when you get there.
exactly.
It's beautiful.
Yep.
It's beautiful. This is
Yeah.
why people say that we are perfect right now. We are perfectly on our path. It's this part of the path that makes the destination what it is. It's wonderful, Jo-Anne. I love the way you explain that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're all in the right place. Even if it feels like we're not, like I often feel, I'm in the wrong place, or I don't feel like I'm in the right place, or I'm whole, or all of that. But
Mm,
that's the whole process.
mm,
It's the unknown, and that's the creative, um process that's going on. The free will and creation is always happening in the present. It's coming, you're basing your present moment on the past that you've already lived and then trying to project yourself into the future of what you want to be or what you think things should be, but it can't be because it's based on the past. So
Right.
it's kind of like this dynamic tension going on, as Jeffrey Wolf Green beautifully put in his book. There's this dynamic tension happening between the past, the present, and the future. And that's the going back to the trinity of being. The moon is the past, the present is the soul living the life, and then the future is the Neptunian principle, spirit, divine. Yeah. So when we go from with our desires, we look at it as this wave on the, going back to the wave on the ocean. The bigger the wave, the more the soul has desire to know oneself, to exist and experience life. And then they only return to source. This is the end of the hero's journey after all separating desires have been exhausted and eliminated, and you don't really have anything left but the one desire, which is to return to source. And we call that the wave on the ocean. And I think that in Hindu texts, they talk about it as well, or
Mhm.
self-realization. I'm also a student of self-realization, although I haven't been as dutiful of a student there.
No, you're
I've just
going
been
by
really
feel.
busy, but
We
yeah,
all have to
the
go by feel on that.
yeah,
But they do talk
um,
about Yogananda has a great poem called Samadhi, and it's based on the same imagery that Samadhi is the ocean, and we're like this wave that is individuates itself from the ocean. But once you realize that you are the ocean, then you're okay with dying. You're okay with the transmutation because you're just going back into your deeper self, which is the ocean out of which you came.
yeah, and it's also that return to source in which you came from
Mm,
is the, returning, going home, I guess, back to what
mm,
what um which your true nature is, what you are.
mm.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
source.
It's amazing that even a picture like that kind of gives us a clue to the fact that even the separating desire to separate from source is all part of what the ocean is doing. You know, it's like the bodhisattva, the prodigal son, the person
That's
who
right.
falls from heaven is the person who has, the deeper you fall from heaven, the deeper your blissful realization of God will be on the return back to source. That's a very Plutonian idea.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love how you put that. And it's definitely a Plutonian ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Yeah. And yeah, like those cusps on the ocean, like that's the soul separating from source, and then it falls back in, it merges, it osmoses back to source.
Mm. Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, so we come to the Pluto method here. We practice this and we look at the trinity of the past. So again, where the soul is coming from, the karmic access, and it's basically trying to speed up the soul's evolution by undoing the karma that's been accumulated and to change the soul's path. Try to, again, speed up evolution, accelerate it. And then we've got the trinity of the future, which is the stuff that we need to move towards to heal. So there's I don't know if I got it here. Yeah, here it is. So we're looking at this chart. The soul's natal chart it's a map. It tells the soul's story of where it's coming from, where it's at in the present moment, and where it's moving towards in order to heal and to let go some of the stuff that you no longer need to hang on to. It helps accelerate the soul. So in looking at this chart, I made it very, very basic. Like I don't even know if it might be as basic as what Jeffrey has in his book. But um, basically looking at the archetypes that I've just overlaid on top of each other. Again, no degrees,
Mm,
no aspects. Usually this would be a base chart and you'd have the natal chart sitting right on top of it, and it would have different house systems, but the base chart would always be underneath it with the
hmm,
energy.
cool.
So yeah, so looking at this chart, for the paradigm is we look at the house that Pluto is in first. That's the number one thing. So we see that, and I kept the archetypes the same, keep it simple.
Right.
So we see that, yeah, Pluto's in the sixth house, which is the Virgo house.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I
And
see.
yeah, and then we talk about the archetype of Virgo, and we start trying to formulate a story of what the possibility of the soul is about, where it's coming from, and how to change the future. So we look at this Virgo archetype, which can be all kinds of stuff like, not good enough, having inferiority complex, feeling inadequate, and feeling or just over analyzing things to
Hmm.
death.
Like
Um,
never feeling okay with 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 what it is, what it has, what it can do, always wanting to perfect itself. That's like the Virgo archetype. With
yeah,
Pluto here, it'd be like the past is
exactly.
yeah, gotcha.
So yeah, where the soul's coming from. So we look at Pluto, the south node, and then the ruler of the south node and the ruler of Pluto. Um, so we see here that the ruler of Pluto is Mercury, and again, simple. It's in Gemini in the third house. When I look at this soul, I kind of think, oh, there's something about the way the soul communicated, or something was being learned, like maybe it was an apprentice, um, or the way the soul spoke, possibly communicated oneself to others in such a way. And when you think about the Virgo archetype, um, and the Gemini archetype, there's something definitely there in
Mm,
the soul not feeling like it had anything good to say.
mm,
Or, you
mm.
start formulating the story this way. And then you
Interesting.
bring,
It's like
yeah,
the guts of the person has the Pluto and Virgo, which is like you said, I don't feel good enough. I don't feel like I'm adequate. I have all these imperfections. And how this person is used to experiencing that underlying tone of Pluto and Virgo is
right.
wherever Mercury is, because Mercury is the dispositor. So in this case, the person is describing that Virgoan content through Mercury and Gemini, which is probably they speak a lot about not being able to feel adequate. And it's working with Mercury through Gemini, which is its own thing. At least I guess the Mercury's in its own sign, which means it's a little bit happy there, but it's still got Plutonian content attached to it.
That's right. Um, exactly what you're saying. That's exactly it. And yeah, so we just start putting a story together. This soul has probably a lot of guilt. That's another part of the Virgo archetype. There's like huge, long list of the
Mm,
Virgo archetype. So there's all kinds of things that can be formulated in trying to put the story together. But the way you do it is you look at Pluto in the house, and then you go to the south node and you look at the south node in the sign and then the house. But I kept it simple, just
mhm,
Scorpio.
yep,
And then you look at the ruler also. Yeah, if you looked at Pluto ruler, Mercury. Then you look at the Scorpio ruler, which is Pluto. It's very
right,
simple. So you
gotcha.
go back here. So there's this stuff here, but in Scorpio, there might have been some betrayals, losses, and abandonments happening, some do or die thinking,
Mm,
some uh, stuff about the occult, maybe. So maybe, Virgo resonates with the healer. Maybe this person was a healer in the past
Mm,
and a healer of the occult. So it
mm,
could have been a witch or
yeah.
somebody who did plant medicine or that sort of thing. And let's just say that they were on trial or there was some kind of inquisition. So that brings the Mercury element or a Gemini speaking element in, and perhaps they lied on the stand or
Mm,
they, in
cool.
um
That's amazing.
yeah, they lied on the state or on the stand, or they didn't tell, so they didn't tell the truth. And Scorpio is about truths as well and
Hmm.
trust. So is Sag. Sag is truth. But there's this element here also of trust.
Mm,
So paranoia. Maybe this person was paranoid about what they said all the time to other people and didn't trust themselves. Um, Maybe this person, this is also teaching, and here, um, I think this is what is this? This is teaching or learning. This is also the apprentice. So maybe something went wrong there with people studying under the soul. Um, what else? I did do some scenarios here, so let's just quickly.
cool.
So yeah, likely had fears and trust issues that were deeply intertwined in the way one communicated to others. Very anxious because Virgo, sixth house is anxiety producing, and where the soul may have felt inadequate when speaking out or was paranoid about what the soul said to others while trying to be perfect. Um, and the six is also a deflation of the ego.
Mm,
So it's something where the soul doesn't feel they can do it right. Um, they keep making mistakes, or there's this failure consciousness going on inside the soul, and they have to keep doing the same thing again and again before they're sure what they're doing. But this can also lead to something called the centipede syndrome, where the centipede is traveling along and then suddenly leg 25 and leg 92 get, stuck in something, and the centipede stops and starts focusing on other stuff and gets caught up in that. And that can be reflective of the Mercury and Gemini as well, getting into these cycles of thought that
mm,
get
hmm.
to be very dizzying.
Mental
Um,
complexes.
yeah, yeah, very much so. Um, and another story is having the soul might have faced many power struggles with others, possibly by serving under them,
Mm,
because Virgo's also service archetype,
right.
and um, may have faced a lot of other people's opinions going on and criticisms, and um, the soul may have also been overly sacrificial in one's efforts, uh, saying that the soul's going to do more than one was capable of doing. So sacrificing, and then later feeling guilty for not doing what the soul said I was going to do. So yeah, this is basically what you do is you try to create these stories
Mm,
that resonate with the soul, and you interact with the soul as well.
right.
Yeah, you ask questions,
Yeah.
and
See if it resonates.
yeah,
Because the
and
the
that
way this narrative plays out is going to be there's so many ways that convey just Pluto and Virgo, but the South Node in Scorpio narrows it down. The Gemini and the Mercury in Gemini narrows it down. And I guess you take the base plate, narrow it down, and then convey to the person this narrowed down picture and see if it resonates with them. Because some aspect of it will obviously, even if the person's not fully awake to it yet, it could be waking things up inside them just by speaking to it.
exactly. And then once you get the aspects going and the phases, and then the other planets involved and those dispositors, and it really takes on a deeper meaning. And so it's just a brilliant paradigm that really penetrates the soul, and you can really get to the bottom of what the soul's story is and where they're coming from, and can actually counsel them and help them move forward. And then, yeah, as far as moving forward, you look to um, looking at the North Node here is about moving forward into the Taurus archetype. Then we've also got the Pluto polar point, which we
Mm-hmm.
consider
Mm-hmm.
here in the 12th house, the Piscean nature, which is, self-forgiveness, self-love, that sort of thing. And then you've got Venus, which is the ruler of the North Node in the seventh,
Mm-hmm.
Libra, involving people, relationships here, that kind of archetype about balance. So I just came up with a couple of um, quick
So,
resolutions, practicing
mm-hmm.
self-forgiveness from deep guilt and betrayals, forming relationships of a spiritual nature, a
Mm-hmm.
relationship with between self and the divine because of the Taurus element there,
Mm-hmm.
which is the internal relationship with self, whereas Libra is with others.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to have a good relationship with yourself before you can have one with others.
Mm, certainly, certainly.
And finding self-values, like deeper self-values and self-worth through your relationships with others. Yeah, using one's healing gifts to benefit others and have a higher purpose for
Mm.
them that serves everybody. Yeah, so I think
It's
that's
amazing to
pretty
see, like,
much,
there could be so many
yeah.
interplays here that me as a as a tropical Vedic astrologer, you could almost consider that the Venus and Mercury, they might not be fully trine, but if they were trine, then you can see that the North Node dispositor, which is Venus, is in trine with Pluto's dispositor, which is Mercury. And so Venus, especially being a benefic in its own sign, being happy in Libra, I could see almost that one way or the other. It's almost like, Mercury's also in trine with the Venus. We could say that the Mercury being one who's probably willing to speak to its reality. The Mercury can help the North Node in Taurus get a grip on what it needs in order to feel comfortable, in order what it needs in order to have that Taurus sense of belonging on planet Earth. Because the Mercury
Yeah.
being trine Venus is going to be able to communicate in order to manifest the desire to get out of the scorpionic hole and onto planet Earth with people, with loved ones, to enjoy itself and to enjoy the nature of reality in itself and to grow happily instead of just staying isolated in its shell. I see a lot of the Mercury in an air sign trine Venus in an air sign, them both being in their own signs. I know you just cropped this up as an example, but this is me bringing my own ideas of where we can go once you finalize the base plate of the chart, which you've presented wonderfully here. Um, I could talk with you for hours about how to get into the integral guts, and maybe we'll do something like that next time I have you on, Jo-Anne. We could do
That
some
would be
deep
great.
cuts, you know. But for now, I'm glad for you to have shown us this wonderful introduction and this presentation. This has been great.
Yeah, that was brilliant, by the way. I didn't pick that up because I was so immersed in trying to get the soul story out.
For
But
sure.
the Gemini and Mercury trining, I mean, they're not, we don't know what the degrees
Right.
are. I didn't put
Right.
them in
Yeah.
to keep it simple, but
Mm.
they are trine archetypes already. And so in a way, the problem, you see what the problem is in the communication, but also the resolution is
Mm.
right there with the problem with the Venus trining the Mercury. And in a way, that kind of shows that maybe this made up soul
Person. Yep. Yep.
chart that I've created has been working on this in past lives. And so there's that trine element that is present in the chart that the soul's already achieved some steps forward
Mm-hmm.
with that that linkage that you mentioned, which is just absolutely brilliant. Thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, my pleasure, Jo-Anne. It's amazing to see how different astrologers are gonna put their eye on things.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing, Jo-Anne. God, I could talk with you forever about it, even the interest of how Pluto's integration point is in a water sign and the south node is in a water sign. So the integration point of one karmic placement is the same element as the past of the other karmic element, which is the south node. So it's almost like the Pluto trying to integrate Pisces is trying to get that water element. And this person obviously has watery reflection in the past because the south node is in Scorpio. Sometimes that can work to advantage, sometimes that can work to a disadvantage. To me, as a Vedic astrologer, it all comes down to the dispositors. That's
Right.
how I typically read these things. Does that make sense the way I've conveyed that?
Yep, that makes total sense. And that's just another element that would show me if this were a real chart,
Mm-hmm.
that this soul is doing a
Mm-hmm.
relive. So it's not a fresh cycle or fresh phasal or stage life starting.
Mm.
It's a work in progress, and yeah, it's just a relive. It's a continuation of the path going forward. Yeah,
Very interesting. Very interesting. Very cool,
yeah,
Jo-Anne.
yeah. Thank you. So yeah, just going to my almost my final page here is just some fantastic books on evolutionary astrology. These are all brilliant. I've read them all, and well, actually, I haven't read The Moon yet, but I've got it.
Mm.
I do intend to read that one, but these are just absolutely brilliant, rich information on this paradigm. And of course, Jeffrey's original book, and then his second book, which is about uh, synastry or relationships.
Right.
And then we get into the structure of the soul, which is not very big. It's a thin book. I think I have it here. Let me see. It's or I had it here somewhere.
Must be
Here it
actively
is.
reading it.
It's yeah, it's hard to find time, but I do try to find time to read books.
I know it.
But yeah, like this is not a very thick book, but it's so rich and brilliant in its information. And then Patricia's book is probably the ultimate study.
Hmm.
I absolutely loved it from the beginning. It's along Jeffrey's line. It lays everything out, but it gives you it from a karmic point of view. Um, and she's a regressional therapist as well as an astrologer. So she gives, she did like, I think 50 charts and connected it to her regressional clients and was able to link it up that, yeah, like she says in her book, you can't make this stuff up. And no, you
Uh,
can't. Every chart is unique. It's like I said earlier, it's spiritual DNA.
hmm.
And her research is phenomenal. Like it's just, you should get that book. It's absolutely a must. And then we've got Rose Marcus. Hers is brilliant too. I think she goes through a couple of uh, different writers as well and their research in there. It's just brilliant. And she looks at charts too. And then we've got Davis' book, which is similar to Jeffrey's book, but she goes into things in a slightly different way.
Hmm.
And then there's the Moon book, which is about the nodes, and I haven't read that one, but I am looking forward to it. It's on my list to get to soon. And yeah, and then we've got the Soulwise School of Evolutionary
And
Astrology,
that's where you
which
that's what you went to, yeah?
yeah, and that's with Laura Nalbandian, Rose Marcus, and Patricia Walsh. It's just brilliant. I mean, the
Gotcha.
way how the whole education is laid out, it's very organized, and you get a really good base and background from the beginning, from level one all the way up to doing charts level three. And then there's the Jeffrey Wolf Green Association of Evolutionary Astrology, School of Evolutionary Astrology. That one is a bit more advanced, so but you can still enjoy it and highly recommend this school.
Mm.
And they've got all kinds of workshops, or what do you call them? Retreats, like the one we mentioned, but you can also get them individually. See, I think they're around 35 US dollars uh, individually if you just want to, special,
Take
like
away at one.
focus in, zero in on one astrologer, you can do that. And then, of course, there's the Evolutionary Astrology YouTube video channel, and there's tons of videos there about EA. Whoops. Other books of interest. Care of the Soul is brilliant. I love that book. It basically explains what the soul is and goes into a lot of detail. Um, the Soul's Code, same kind of idea. James Hillman, brilliant. Meeting the Shadow, it gives you a lot of case studies here
Whoa.
about the dark side of human nature. And this is more coming from a karmic point of view. Carl Jung, anything that he's written, anything that James Hollis, who studied at the Carl Jung Institute, anything he's written, and there's a lot of books. I mean, you can go to the back of any of these books
And find.
and find, yeah, you just look at their bibliography and you're going to find tons more books that are brilliant to read. Um, and yeah, to dive right into this stuff.
It's like a spider web of
Yes,
shared
Spiderweb is right.
influences.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Amazing. Oh, Jo-Anne, this has been so wonderful.
Oh, and I just wanted to add one more thing.
Please.
Rose Marcus, she's just absolutely brilliant in doing transits.
Mm.
She did a transit course with us as well. So yeah, she really knows her stuff. I'm just blown away by a lot of her research and highly recommend Rose Marcus too. Yeah,
Wonderful. Awesome. I've been in touch a little bit with Rose Marcus. It's amazing to see that
that's
you've
great.
been connecting with this group. And I believe, Jo-Anne, if I'm not mistaken, since you've completed your studies, I think that you yourself are now starting to do charts and you've probably been doing charts a little bit at this point, yeah?
Yes, yes, I'm already doing charts and gaining some clients. Not many, but slowly getting there.
Well, of course, and I think that from talking to you, I know you'd be great. Would you like to share a plug for how people can get a hold of you if they were interested in getting a chart reading from you?
Yes, absolutely. I do have a card set up. It's in my slides, this one right
Oh,
here.
perfect. Look at that.
Yeah, yeah. If anybody's interested in having their chart read and or just to chat about where they're coming from, please feel free to reach out. I would love to chat with you and to get to know you better and help you with your evolutionary journey, your heroic journey of the
Wonderful. The hero's journey. It's an
hero's
amazing,
journey.
it's an amazing thing to have anybody helping. And for anybody just listening, her email is jaborlase@gmail.com. It's J.A. Borlase, I guess I could say. Right?
Yes,
Yeah, J.A.
Borlase.
Borlase at gmail.com. And nice to see you got your website going as well.
Yeah,
Awesome, Jo-Anne. So I am
thank
so
you.
happy to have you here. Talking to you has just been a delight for me. And I'm sure that everybody on my channel is going to love the discussion as well. I love being able to feature evolutionary astrologers on here. It's really such a deep root for me. So I thank you very deeply for spending the time and giving us this wonderful little introspective introduction to the field. And I'd love to have you on here for more. There's lots of places we could go to, just opening up a chart and just digging through the bones and having fun hacking at it.
That would be awesome. I would love to do that. That
Awesome,
would be
Jo-Anne.
great.
I'd
Thank
love
you.
to open the space for you to do that with me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. My
Yeah,
pleasure,
this
Jo-Anne.
was fantastic. It was an absolute joy. I can't thank you enough. I'm so grateful for this. This feels like a blessing to me.
Mm,
I'm grateful for our friendship as well.
mm.
And yeah, yeah, looking forward to chatting more in the future with you.
That sounds great, Jo-Anne. So for everybody watching, this is How to Rock Astrology, along with my friend Jo-Anne Borlase. Thanks for hanging out with us, and keep your eyes peeled in the future because we always got more funky stuff happening in the world of How to Rock Astrology and Evolutionary Astrology. Thanks a lot, folks. Thanks for coming,
Thank
Jo-Anne.
you. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste.